In this video, we are talking the Comcast Disney dynamic and how this story between Comcast versus Disney is really shaping up to be a very interesting one indeed. Disney and Comcast have a very storied history, especially with Brian Roberts. So the war is not over and it rages on. We're going to talk about it up next. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG55. In this video, like I mentioned before, we are discussing the Comcast Disney dynamic. These companies have kind of been, at each other's throats for a long time. I mean, like even since the Michael Eisner era, it's been crazy. We're going to dive into that and how it's affecting the Walt Disney Company today. But before we do that, I want to introduce Vash Sky, Dr. Dre, the DA, as George calls you now, the DA.
The DA. I can I just be the attorney without the law degree? I guess. I'm the attorney for the state. Good. Okay, but I do appreciate the compliments, sir. I know you. Everybody means it in good fun, so I happy to do that. Hey, if you want to go ahead and follow me, you can go and do so right down there at Vash Scotch. Go ahead and type it into Twitter. Should pop up for all the, as Christine Waysons McCarthy would say, for all the robust discussion right there. Oh, gee, you got that drop for me?
I got that drop. Walt, go ahead and take it away.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
The biggest bargain of all. That's right. I think he was talking about the show. Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed. Your source for juice, news, and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
Pay attention, it's showtime.
You're right, Jose. It is showtime. And I think this is going to be a very interesting one because, well, you know me. Look, listen. I love MickeyViews, and if you haven't seen it, we did a whole YouTube kind of favorite content creators. MickeyViews is definitely my number one in my top 5 list there, and he's that way for a reason. And he had some very interesting commentary that I think was very poignant for, or let's say, like, it spoke to a lot of maybe the issues that have been popping up recently regarding the Disney company in all facets, not just parks, even with streaming, their content creation in general, and so forth. So I think this is going to be really interesting. And yes, it does deal with that Comcast Disney dynamic, like you so eloquently put in our intro, OG, but it also deals with a little bit of Bob Iger and Bob Chapek. We love to do it. So let's go ahead. Let's get started here. All right, here we go.
And I've noticed recently, someone commented on my Address Unknown video, my latest documentary over there. I think it's almost at 200,000 views. Thank you guys so much, by the way. Someone was saying, I just rediscovered your channel. I unsubscribed from you after I realized that you were like a Bob Chapek defender or something like that, which is funny that people think of me that way. I've always tried to establish that I don't hate Bob Chapek, because a lot of people want to put me in that camp with the people that are always dogging on Bob Chapek. I just always kind of sympathized a little bit with Bob Chapek's position, just by virtue of the fact that people really don't give his predecessor, Bob Iger, a lot of flack.
Can we pause it for a second?
I feel like he deserves way more.
Sure.
Like out the gate, Braden's already getting spicy. Like out the freaking gate. I respect Braden a lot for that comment because, and I've said this many times, the fandom loves, they just can't help themselves. They love to demonize and pit the blame on one person. It's this person, we don't like this person. Everything is that person's fault. And if we have to move the goalpost 15 different ways to blame this one guy, Chapek, we'll do it. And we've seen that before where it's like when he was the parks chief, everything with the parks was Chapek's fault. It wasn't Bob Iger's fault, the CEO. No. It was the parks chief, Bob Chapek. And that's fine. Okay, fine, whatever. But then when Chapek became the CEO and we had Daddy Josh is running the parks, the goalpost changed with fans, and now it's Chapek's fault still. So now apparently every decision made by the parks is the CEO's fault when it wasn't the CEO's fault when Bob Iger was in office. So the thing that's what I really respect about Braden with that comment was that he understands that. He's smart enough to know that like these things, he knows where to place the accountability.
Right.
And a lot of fans, they're emoting, like our friend Jay from Story Geek say, they're emoting and they just want to like lash out and blame somebody.
Yep.
And MickeyViews is saying, Braden is saying, no. Look, I'm looking at this from a realistic, intelligent standpoint. Yep. I'm placing accountability where it lies. I'm trying to understand Chapek's position, the situation on the ground, and I'm going to give you my opinion and my analysis based on that.
Yes.
Much respect to him, because a lot of fandom, aside from us and a handful of others, don't do that. And they just emote and it's bald man bad and this, that, and the other. And it's all over the place. So much kudos. I just want to say much kudos to Braden on that, because he's getting a lot of shit for it, but he's standing his ground and he takes the in Star Wars, they call it the high ground. And I do respect that, Braden. Keep going, brother.
Exactly. There's a saying, the motivation is the master of reason, not reason. Reason is not the master of motivation, right? And so it's like, okay, how do I get into Bob Chapek's head? What is he going through? And like you said, it's like, what's his motivation? What is driving him to maybe make some of the decisions that he is making from the CEO position? And it's like, okay, now I kind of understand. That's why it's really kind of important to kind of dive into this, because not only can you go into the history, right, and evaluate and analyze what has been done, but using those techniques, you can predict the future and where it's going. So it is really profound. And what he is saying here, I don't know, OG. We've been saying it on the channel for quite some time. And I think he's correct. He's got some charts for us, too.
People really don't give his predecessor, Bob Iger, a lot of flack. And I feel like he deserves way more flack than he gets, because Bob Iger, what he basically did effectively, this is figurative obviously, he set the house on fire and then he walked out. He just walked away. That's really kind of what he did, because Iger made that deal with Rupert Murdoch for 20th Century Fox. And Comcast was just messing with Disney and basically getting Disney to raise their price that they were willing to spend for this Fox acquisition. Disney acquires Fox for this insane figure. And what have we gotten since? Disney.
This is interesting, right? Because I think we were just having this conversation, OG, on the phone, even just I think like a day ago.
Yeah.
Like, hey, our kind of view or perception of Bob Iger has changed for a very particular reason. OG, go ahead.
Yeah, no, 100%. And in that conversation on the phone that we had, and we've discussed it on the videos as well in the past, where it's like, what is Bob Iger's legacy? What is Bob Iger known for at the Walt Disney Company? Acquisitions. He's the acquisition king. So he knew that the Fox deal was going to be his last acquisition, right? So he's not going to go out. He doesn't want to leave the company like a chump, like a failure with a failed acquisition, because that tarnishes the whole thing. He didn't do anything else at Disney really except for acquisitions. So if the last acquisition before he walks away is a failure, that taints the whole thing. It shits the bed, right?
Yeah.
So he was going to pay for Fox. He was going to pay for this come hell or high water, whether he had to pay $60 billion, $70 billion, if he had to pay $90 billion, he was going to pay it. He had to get this. Otherwise, his entire legacy is destroyed.
It is.
So this was a Bob Iger move. This is Bob Iger looking out for Bob Iger. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't want this to come off like I totally hate Bob Iger. I do not hate Bob Iger. I used to respect him a lot more, I will say that, but I think he has done a lot of great things for the Walt Disney Company. Absolutely. Sure. I can diminish all the good because he had a few bad. But the last year or so and the transition going into this new administration, the Chapek administration, was an absolute disaster. Yeah. Racking up the company credit card, basically, and then telling Chapek right before the pandemic, see ya, man, G4, peace, right?
Yeah.
Was not the way that we were not sold that. Since 2012, Bob Iger was telling us we're going to do this transition the most responsible way possible. And when it mattered the most, right before the pandemic and right after a $71 billion acquisition, Iger said, you know what? Call me if you need me. I'm out. Not cool, Bob Iger. I'm sorry. Not cool.
It's not cool. I mean, and I remember at the time going, ooh, that's a lot of money. I don't know if necessarily I would have paid that, because think about this, OG. I remember reading at the time that if you rack up the company's assets, all of its products, its content library, everything that it has to show for itself, the company was worth like $150 billion at the time this deal was made. So taking on $71 billion, half of that debt right off the bat, it's like, whoa, that is huge. I mean, it could literally tank the company if this goes south here. And that's just on the face of it. And then, well, we all know what happens in about March of 2020, right? And that was a pivotal moment. That was a pivotal moment for the company. Bob Iger knew it was coming. He was getting the reports coming out of Shanghai and China, right? Shanghai Disneyland had closed at that point. China itself had started to lock down almost all of its industry effectively. So it was like, okay, if this comes here, and there were reports at the time suggesting that this is going to leave us in a very financially climactic situation, necessarily, right? And that was a pivotal moment. It's either weather the storm, or leave. And Bob Iger said, peace, and just left. And that was whoa.
And Bob Iger isn't just like some dude, right? Like Bob Iger has said in interviews that when he retired, he was on the phone with former President Barack Obama with how to deal with like civilian life, basically. Yes. So he's very cozy with Barack Obama. So you mean to tell me that when the pandemic hit, that this guy had no idea that things were going to shut down? Yeah. Being that connected, you're a phone call away from Barack Obama, and you were blindsided by the pandemic. I don't buy that for a second. He knew things were shutting down. He knew what was coming, and he said, "You know what? See ya, Chapek. You deal with it." And that's wrong.
Just to add a little bit to that, by the way, I love the political connection there. Look at members of Congress and where some of those investments were taking, where they were going with it, just right on the eve of the whole shutdowns and everything. Look at what they were investing in. You think they knew something was coming? I think they did. And I bet you anything that Bob Iger knew this was going to hurt the company in profound ways. But, hey, it's not my deal. I don't want that staining my reputation or legacy. And he walks out the door. And it's like, wow. And then, to add a little bit of insult to injury, he foists this whole thing on Chapek's shoulders. He's trying to, prop it up any way he possibly can, through any means he possibly can. And then Iger says, you know what? Oh, I really have to come back. But instead of telling Bob Chapek directly, I'll go ahead and tell the Hollywood Reporter.
Right.
It's
right.
Come on. Yeah, I could understand why there might be some animosity there from a decision like that.
Little bit.
Right?
Little bit. You went over his head, and you went straight to the media. I work a 9-to-5 job, right? Mm-hmm. I don't like the YouTube thing. For me, is just fun. It's a hobby, but I have a regular 9-to-5 job. And if I went over my boss's head and was like, and went just straight to my boss's boss, there'd be a little bit of tension there, Yeah. I mean, anytime you go over anyone's head in the corporate landscape, it's kind of seen as like a dick move, right? And for him to do that and just go straight to the media, you don't even talk to Chapek. You don't even pull him aside and as a courtesy say, hey, Bob, look, I'm gonna talk to the Hollywood Reporter. I'm gonna tell him I'm gonna step in and kind of help out. As a team, we're going to be like kind of a co-CEO kind of situation and kind of navigate these waters. This is unprecedented. I don't think Chapes would have cared. He would have said, absolutely, Iger, I support you to do that. Let's be a united front here and keep this thing afloat. I don't think Chapek would be adverse to that. But the fact that you just go over his head, you don't even talk to him about it, and you just go straight to the media and then you undermine him. And everyone's laughing at Chapek at that point in time, going, this guy doesn't even run his own ship. It makes Chapek look really bad. Oh, man. If I was Chapek, I'd be furious, too. I do not blame him at all for being mad about that. And Iger really did screw him over on that. And I hope he called him and apologized, at the very least.
I don't know about all that, but it just felt like I gotta be honest. I'm not sure, but Bob Iger doing that, it seemed like he wanted to get back in the game and be looked at as the White Knight without the burden of being the guy in the hot seat. Right?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I'm saving the company again. Here we go.
Exactly. And it's like not and the fact that he went to the media first, I mean, come on, that tells you the dynamic of what was really going on there.
Yeah.
Right? And it really is unfortunate, but Braden does go on.
Let's continue.
Fox for this insane figure. And what have we gotten since? You know, Disney's owned Fox for a while now, for like 3 years now. What have we gotten out of it? Disney's barely utilized any of their Fox stuff. They really haven't taken advantage of it to any great extent. So they bought all these properties. They spent an enormous sum of money, and we really didn't seem to get a whole lot out of it. And further,
he is right. I mean, what has really happened here? I think a lot has been made. Even more has been made over the Hulu, the portion, the Fox Fox's stake in Hulu, right? And what is it? Some of these things that they've sold off and so forth. I think that, you know, that's the only really major thing I've heard from Fox up until, I mean, we are in October. You do have an upcoming release for Avatar 2, which is good, but again, we got a pretty good debt load, as Braden will point out. OG, what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Fox has a lot of good properties. I think Fox has a lot of good stuff. Like in regards to Hulu, I know Hulu. I'm a big Hulu fan. Like I watch a lot of streaming stuff. Mm-hmm. And they have a lot of the Fox stuff on there, like FX and all that. And a lot of the FX stuff is really top tier. It's great content. So you have that. You have like The Simpsons on D+, and then you got like the obvious stuff, like, you know, all the fanboys love, like the X-Men coming to the MCU, which is awesome. I mean, no doubt, everyone loves that. And you got Avatar, and then you have some loose ends tied up with Star Wars that you know, with that acquisition. Okay, those are all fantastic things. But is all of that worth $71 billion? Now, to be fair, like you mentioned, Dre, they did sell off some stuff like the Fox Sports and all that. I think they made like 15 or 20 billion off of that stuff. So technically, this whole thing was maybe 50 billion. But even at 50 billion, it's a little over.
It's insane, right? Yeah, it's insane. And
it's a lot of money.
Right. And it's like, I'm glad that they're starting to use the Fox stuff. We're hearing stuff like, you know, Storm's reintroduction into the MCU, or introduction to the MCU, not even reintroduction. We're hearing stuff like, you know, obviously Deadpool, you know, is coming out. We're hearing some rumors, great on the MCU front, which is fantastic. Like I said, Avatar 2. But even if you combine all of those, and even if they made, let's be really generous, $10 billion at the box office, right? And maybe we can add even more when it comes to merchandise revenue and so forth. I mean, that doesn't even come close to their debt obligation. I mean, it's an insane amount of money, and it makes no sense. And it might even get worse, but we'll continue.
Enormous sum of money, and we really didn't seem to get a whole lot out of it. And furthermore, when they did that Fox acquisition, it pumped the stock, obviously, you know, because now the company has more assets. This, of course, was great for the executives who own a lot of shares of the company. They were able to sell those for a nice profit. But what actually happened, if you look at Disney's balance sheet at the start of 2019, when the deal went through, it wasn't just Disney's overall value that went up. A big chunk of the company became debt. If you look at Disney's balance sheet in 2019, the debt is basically the same as what the entire company was worth in 2018, which is just insane to think about. So we had this enormous uptick in debt that was on Disney's books that they were forced to service. And then the events of 2020 unfold, and basically Disney loses all their cash flow from the parks. Iger says, here you go, Chapek, you deal with it. Iger steps down from the CEO spot, and now Chapek is the one holding the bag with this $50 billion of debt that Disney has. And I think that this debt that Disney's been servicing, and they have been servicing it quite aggressively. I believe now it's down to like 46 as of this past June on Disney's balance sheet. So Disney has been paying down this debt. I suspect that's where all the money is going. Where
I think he is correct in this, but go ahead, OG. You want to say something?
Well, that's surprising. I did not know that. They are getting pretty aggressive with bringing that debt down. 46. I mean, that's not too shabby. It's still a high number, but I mean, they are working that number down considerably. But here's the thing that I think that fans need to understand, right? In that, like, a lot of fandom when Disney starts with the parks, they start to raise prices. They start to nickel and dime. They start to do Genie Plus, paid Fast Pass, all this stuff. And fans were like, oh, well, Disney's $1 billion company, global company. They can survive. Let me just get my free this and my free that and all right, cheap tickets and cheap this and cheap that. Okay, that's fine. But then at the same time, you're going to be like, ha, 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 look at all the debt Disney has. So fans can't have it both ways. It's either the invincible $1 billion company, and they should give me a discount, or the company is fucked because of all their debt. Mm-hmm. You can't really have things both ways. You got to pick a lane. Now, in my opinion, I think the company is in real danger with the debt. And I think that's why it's necessary to kind of nickel and dime a little bit and get a little bit more aggressive with those profit margins. I know a lot of fans don't want to hear that, but it's either that or we don't have Disney at all.
Yes.
Your choice, fandom. Your choice. Well, but you have to make a call here. There's a lot of debt, and I'm sorry you're paying $20 for Genie Plus, but at the end of the day, it's either that or we don't have any company at all. I mean, these companies, even Disney, they're not like invincible. These companies have like real debt, real issues, and it doesn't take much to bring something down. We've seen companies that are 100+ years old, like Sears, go under. Like, I don't want Disney to have that fate. I don't. And I'm not saying like you got to take one for the team and just spend more, fine. You don't want to spend it. You don't got to spend it. That's on you. That's on you and your family. But just understand why Disney is doing what they're doing right now at the parks. This is why.
Absolutely. I mean, this is it right here. This is why Chapek and others have been leaning so heavily into yield management strategies right at the parks, attempting to get operating costs down. This is why we're seeing prices increase with the rate of inflation in order to preserve those revenues and profit margins so aggressively in order to transfer whatever they end up making into this debt burden here. I mean, it's extraordinary. And again, this is on top of all of the operating expenses, the huge amount of operating costs, development costs, production costs for the content that they produce every single day. Wow. So it's there's a lot of moving parts here, and you can kind of understand when Chapek was asked about the question of, and I believe MickeyViews actually goes into it later on, but when he was asked about Mary Poppins, or he was asked about the Avengers e-ticket, right? We played that as part of that coordinator. No, it was actually, I believe, the shareholders conference, the famous one featuring the story coming out of Florida, which that was that kind of dominated the news cycle as one can expect. But one of the questions that was asked was, hey, when are we gonna maybe get some of these new attractions and so forth? And it's like, well, we have some major liquidity issues. We have some major issues that we had to contend with, because it's not just this debt burden. It's also, remember, for large swaths of 2020 and even into 2021, a lot of their the revenue streams were closed. Theaters were closed. The cruise lines were closed. Disneyland was closed for 412 days, but even Walt Disney World was closed for a period of time. A lot of their international operations were defunct. So you have a massive debt load, and again, that comes with an interest payment, which if you miss even one interest payment, you have to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now, bank's going to get theirs. Can you imagine what it would take in order to pay back their debt obligation all at once, utilizing the assets they have? Think about what the company might look like if that actually occurred, right? So you have all of this stuff, and it's like, oh my God, we have almost no way to pay it back. That's why they took out that loan in order to pay down not only some of that other debt, outstanding debt, but also those interest payments as well. Right. And again, one of the reasons why they have been so aggressive on this debt as of late, it's not just because of their debt obligation, but there's the other story that's going on with all of this, right? Which is they are obligated in 2024 to buy Comcast's remaining a stake in Hulu, right? And Hulu itself is valued at around $25 billion. I mean, it's a significant amount. So as far as Comcast is concerned, we'll go ahead and read a little bit of this article here. This is from a Variety article like a month ago, right? So it's a little bit out of date, but there are a couple paragraphs that explain this quite well. Disney currently owns 66% of Hulu. They when they acquired Fox, right, they had 33%. They took their stake, combined it with their own. That's where you get the 66%. But remember, it was a three-way deal. Comcast holds the remaining 33% stake. As of July 2nd, 2022, Disney recorded Comcast's interest in Hulu as being worth $8.6 billion, implying a valuation of $25.8 billion. An auction-style sale of Hulu in its entirety, Roberts suggested Hulu may fetch more than that. He is correct. Brian Roberts, CEO of Comcast. Under the agreement that gave Disney operational control of Hulu, Comcast in January 2024 has the right to require Disney to buy its Hulu ownership stake. And conversely, Disney has the right to force Comcast to sell it. Very, very interesting. So I think that's why they have been so aggressive in getting some of this debt off the balance sheet, because they're about to add, I think, about $8 billion more to it.
Right. No, exactly. And that's why it's really easy, I think, for fans just to be like, well, I don't like the price hikes. I don't want to pay for Fast Pass. Well, when you're in the chair, when you're in the captain's seat, and you look at that little synopsis that Dre just gave you, how much is at stake here?
Yeah.
Like you said, you miss one interest payment, you file Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly your Genie Plus thing doesn't seem like that significant. It's I mean, you can see why they're making these decisions. It's not to hurt your feelings, fandom.
Right.
It's because they have to.
It's absolutely because they have to. I mean,
they have to.
We're talking a lot of money is at stake. That's why they took out even more debt in order to be somewhat financially solvent. That's why they're not giving out a dividend, right? And it's just to clarify here, just like $8.6 billion. Oh, how much really is that? I mean, they built all of Shanghai Disneyland from initial development, land acquisition, production, opening, right? All of that between, I think it was anywhere between $6 to $8 billion. Well, I mean, we're talking that's it, right? That's a theme park's worth of money. Well, and then you talk about this. I mean, that's a considerable amount right there. It's absolutely huge. But we'll go on a little bit here.
Let's go.
Before this Fox acquisition, which I think was a huge mistake and Disney definitely didn't need to do, and I don't think that the intentions for it were very good. I think it was a lot about pumping the stock. That's just my personal take there. I think that Disney would have been in a much better position for the events of 2020. I think that capital expenditure would not have been cut at the parks to the degree that it ended up being cut. Even while the parks were closed, I think Disney still would have had the money to continue all the construction projects like Universal did. Universal built Velocicoaster in record time while a lot of parks were closed around the world. And meanwhile at Disney, it was just like, oh, we're not doing anything. We're not investing anything. And that's because Disney was stuck servicing this debt. And you see when the events of 2020 started to unfold, Disney borrowed a bunch of cash. They increased their cash position, which also increased their debt. But they had to do that just to try to, maintain some liquidity, because Disney constantly...
You can see where you see that cash that they acquired through that loan from the banks, as we had heard, and you can see how that adds to that debt, to that debt obligation right there. So it's this chart actually goes into that quite nicely. But I mean, it's the thing about Comcast is they didn't have to service that debt, but you also have to remember why they were in this position in the first place, right? It's because Comcast got the upper hand on them in 2019, I think. I mean, obviously they didn't actually come away with Fox, but they were able to pump up the price of Fox and have Disney pay over double for it. Because I believe at the time, I think the initial bid was like about $35 billion. Is that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and then Iger's legacy bullshit got in the way, so he decided he's going to buy it no matter what. And he overpaid for it.
Yeah, he absolutely overpaid for it. Yeah, it's around double, right? Than what was originally offered, and my suspicion is that maybe even Fox wasn't even valued that high. Knowing Disney's guys that internal guys that evaluate these things, but with acquisitions before, usually Disney paid a little bit more, right, for those things just off the bat, and then Comcast comes in there and ups the bid quite considerably. So they didn't have that obligation. They were able to invest in their parks. Meanwhile, Disney has a secondary obligation to Comcast now to pay them back. Pay for the remaining Hulu stake there, the outstanding stake that Comcast actually has, and now it's like. I guess Disney is paying for Epic Universe essentially, right? If we think about the context of the $8 billion park wise, that's probably going to be Comcast's price for Epic Universe, which is interesting. Braden has since deleted this tweet, but he was insinuating that whole thing, right? Because Disney was having to buy Comcast out for Hulu, which I believe they will do. I think that negotiating process has started. Yeah, and the ARPU for Hulu, it's like I think that's a big part of the strategy going forward with Disney Plus is for Hulu integration. I think it's a big part of going to be. What is going to be the eventual overall valuation of Disney Plus and their on-demand segment and so forth. So it's going to be quite fascinating how that turns out. However, Braden was saying, maybe be happy about paying $15 for a soda or whatever because Disney's got to pay for Epic Universe in this kind of roundabout way. It's really fascinating. I mean, Comcast. They're looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, they got a good deal on that, but it's not like look, Disney's got a pretty sweet deal too. I mean, you go to Universal Parks and Disney gets paid. I mean, because Universal has this thing where they love to rent IP. They don't want to invest in their own IP. And I've been screaming this to the mountaintops over and over and over again, and it's a detriment to the Universal branding, in my opinion. But they constantly want to rent, right? We're gonna do a deal with Nintendo. We're gonna do a deal with J.K. Rowling. We're gonna do a deal with The Simpsons. We're gonna do a deal with Marvel, and it comes kind of at a price, right? So now Disney, it's not in the billions, but every time you go to a Universal Park, Islands of Adventure, Disney gets a cut because Universal has to pay Disney a licensing fee to use Marvel, which Universal is not in any hurry to get rid of. And they have to pay Disney a licensing fee now for Simpsons. So it's like when people say, I'm going to boycott Disney, go to Universal. Well, you're not exactly boycotting Disney because Disney gets paid even when you go to Universal.
Sure. They get a licensing fee, but they do, but this is interesting. I kind of liken it to like, Disney's arrangement with the Oriental Land Company, right? Oriental Land Company does, have to pay a annual licensing fee, right? And they have to pay Disney to develop projects and so forth through Imagineering and all that, right? But like, does Disney necessarily enjoy that arrangement? I think they would opt to have an ownership stake in Tokyo Disneyland, at a drop of a hat. However, they just have a licensing fee, which is why they've been so aggressive with future international products, Paris, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. They've been so aggressive in like, hey, we're going to have a good chunk here because we want a little bit more than just a straight up licensing fee. So you can kind of look at it both ways. It's a very kind of interesting dynamic here, but it is one of the reasons why Disney's not so bullish, let's say, on getting those Marvel rights back, because it's like, we might be missing on some revenue opportunities in Florida specifically, but it's Comcast is probably gonna charge us an arm and a leg for it anyway.
Well, and the thing too is that Comcast only holds the rights to like more of the legacy Marvel stuff. Yeah, but like the MCU is kind of moving away from that stuff anyway at this point.
They are.
Like Guardians and all this other stuff that they want to do, Eternals or whatever is going in the future, right? Even like I think even like WandaVision wouldn't even be prohibited in Florida. Like, so it's not even like Disney is really held back too much because a lot of stuff that Universal has the right to are characters from like 2014, like Winter Soldier, Captain America, Hulk, all that. But they're kind of moving away a little bit from all that stuff. Yeah. But I think with the licensing fees, though, I think the reason why they were more aggressive with like the Paris, like they wanted to have ownership of the Paris park and kind of get out of that licensing deal was because that park was struggling. So it was, I think they probably saw that as like, okay, well, it's beneficial, but Tokyo isn't struggling and they're kind of very much the opposite. So why not just not have to pay Disney's money and just get that licensing fee and let them handle the parks? And they're doing a good job anyway.
Well, Disney wanted to own more off the bat for Disneyland Paris. It was actually the French government that prevented them from owning more in it. So off the bat, they then acquired more of it in order to further facilitate a rebirth for that entire resort. Because it was kind of this public entity before, they had to, they had to go through the banks in order to facilitate the construction of new projects and so forth. If they took a more ownership stake in it, they could forego a lot of those processes and get further investments and improvements in that park. So yes, you are. I wouldn't say you were incorrect. However, Disney wanted to go all in off the bat because they felt that Paris was really going to, it was really going to be a juggernaut on the level of Tokyo, and that didn't quite happen. But I will say to anybody watching, definitely check out that video. I'll go ahead and give you the link, OG. We'll have that in the description
down below
by the time this comes up. It is a fascinating video. He goes into not just what was featured there currently, but it's like a 24-minute video. We only scratched the surface on it. He goes into not only that, but he goes into like Harmonious and some of the failures that Disney has been having recently, at least when it comes to Walt Disney World entertainment and attractions and so forth. What's going on there, and it all kind of mixes in with maybe what's going on at kind of a higher view of the Disney company and what's really taking place in Burbank and how it affects what you see in Orlando. So it's a really fascinating type thing here. I also wanted to bring this tweet up. I don't have it ready. But I'll read it. This is from Sir Breaking as well. Chapek is the guy counting nickels and dimes, trying to pay down debt after wifey swiped the credit card way too many times. Look at Disney's debt after Fox, LMAO. No wonder they have no money for CGI or rides. And I don't believe he's completely wrong.
Well, and that's the thing, and that's why fans need to pick a lane. Like you can't say Disney is $1 billion invincible company, and I shouldn't have to pay for Genie Plus, and then at the same time be like, ha ha ha, look, they're so fucked because of their debt. As fans, we have to acknowledge the company is going through some stuff. Yeah, and we have to acknowledge that with that stuff that Bob Iger set up for us, lovely Bob Iger set up for us, we're gonna have to pay up. We're gonna have to fork out more for that, and that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. It really is. If it wasn't for that Fox deal, we'd be in a much different situation. And it's easy to blame it on Chapek because he's the guy caught holding the bag, but it wasn't him. He's like Braden said, he's the one, he's the guy trying to pay down the credit card that wifey kept swiping and ran up.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. That's why fans, I think, do need to orientate themselves a little bit, right? We see the D23 Expo Parks panel and we go, yeah, but he didn't announce anything. And it's like, well, you can kind of see why. Right. And Braden even talks about this, which is interesting. I mean, if, right now, nothing really is even in development worth to speak of. I mean, there are some projects, but as far as Walt Disney World goes, I mean, once Tron opens, that's it for a while there. And you have to think, right? Guardians of the Galaxy started its development cycle back in like 2015, and it just opened this year, right? So even if they were to let's say we play out the fan scenario, right, where they respond to Epic Universe, and it's like we're gonna Epic Universe is great, but we got attractions of our own. Well, they haven't even started that process already, so we're talking like what, late 2020s, maybe early 2030s, until we see anything on the grand scale of something like a Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, for example. And with Disney's current debt burden, yeah, I can kind of see that happening.
Yeah, and I don't want them. I gotta be honest. Like, I don't want them to do anything that's gonna put the company in jeopardy. No ride is worth that to me.
Yeah.
I don't really. I know fans are kind of like in this mind space right now, where it's like they got to respond to Epic Universe. I'm cool with chilling and seeing how that park does. I'm not convinced that park is going to be the home run people think it's going to be. And I think Disney needs to just to kind of hold off and wait on that. Because I think that you don't, especially when you have the debt that you have, you don't want to overreact. You don't want to add, you don't want to put fuel on the fire. You already have a problem right now with the Fox and the pandemic and the debt and this, that, and the other. Hulu thing is on the horizon. You don't want to throw more debt into the equation in a hasty response to something that you don't even know it's going to do well. For all we know, Epic Universe might cannibalize Universal parks, and Disney might not even be affected. Now, it might not happen that way, but we don't know. And I think that's why it's really smart for Disney to wait. They can survive the wait. And it's not something that like, oh, if they don't respond the day Epic Universe opens, they're going to go under. It's not going to happen. They waited with Wizarding World. They waited with Islands of Adventure. If they wait with this, maybe they'll lose for the year. The attendance will hit them for the year Epic opens or something. But in the day, though, it's not going to tank the Walt Disney Company. But what will tank the Walt Disney Company if they go way too deep in debt and they spend way too much and they can't pay that back. So let's wait and see how Epic Universe does, I think, before you throw $1 billion into some kind of response that might not even be needed.
Well, I listen, I do agree with you. I think we shouldn't throw major amounts of capital towards things, but we don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, it'd be crazy if we threw $30 billion towards the studio division and then, so look, the approach going forward, and I think, and Brandon even talks about this a little bit. He even says, like, hey, I think Chapek is the guy that kind of wants to spend a little bit more in the parks. I think he is the guy that kind of wants to spend money on the Mary Poppins project and so forth, but he's got all these other obligations in which to contend with before he can even be in this. They're still kind of in survival mode, not really growth mode, right? And so it's like, okay, but we have to deal with these things, but I'd like to do it if we were in this other mode, but we're just not yet, right? So I think hopefully some of these things balance themselves out a little bit better than they maybe have been up until this point. But look, listen, with the remaining capital that we have, with the remaining investment that we have, let's go ahead and spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a redo, right, for a beloved attraction that people love. What could possibly go?
We still got to do that video. We got to do that video.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm leading us up into it. I'm giving the audience a tease for maybe what our next subject and topic will be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We got a great question from a subscriber, Marshan. We love Marshan, and she's not too happy with how Disney has handled the Tiana stuff. And we're gonna do a whole video on it. It was meant for a Q&A, but we're gonna do a whole video on it because it's just too juicy of a topic to just kind of have in passing in a Q&A. So we'll definitely do that. But Dre, brother, thank you so much for coming on. Today was a fantastic conversation. I love what Braden does, because Braden is really Braden, and I say this at the top of the show too. Braden is a really grounded guy, right? He's a grounded guy in the sense that like he doesn't get too wrapped up in his emotions, and he's very much like, I'm not just gonna slam this because I'm mad. I'm going to look at this from a real intellectual standpoint, and I appreciate that. I don't always agree with Braden. I really don't, but I appreciate the fact that he takes the time, take a breath, and kind of look at it from a real analytical standpoint. And I will definitely link that video down below. Obviously, watch it. Subscribe to him if you haven't already. My God, if you're not subscribed to MickeyViews, what are you doing with your life? I mean, he's like seriously one of the best content creators right now in the Disney space.
Oh yeah,
he's out there with really thought-provoking stuff. His live streams are bangers too. Like on the fly, he's on his camera, like providing riveting content. Like this guy is crazy, man. He's really, really good and insightful. So definitely check him out. But Dre, to close it out, if you can let everybody know home know where they can find you on social media, my friend.
Oh, no problem at all. No problem at all. Yeah, you can go ahead and follow me at FashGuy right there on Twitter. Go ahead and type it in. Should pop up for you real fast. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now, Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. Definitely got to subscribe down there. You definitely want to keep tabs because we got a couple of great videos in the works, actually. But yeah, just to echo your sentiments about Braden, he is great. He just recently got some amazing drone footage of the construction of Epic Universe. So definitely subscribe to him while you're clicking some red buttons down there below. Great stuff, fascinating stuff. Some this thing on Tiana, I think it's gonna be really interesting. And gonna look at the micro and the macro. It's gonna be great. You guys definitely want to see that.
Absolutely. And we'll let Optimus close us out.
It's been an honor serving with you all.
Thank you, Optimus, and thank you, Dre, and thank you all for watching. Comment down below with your thoughts on everything in regards to the Comcast, Disney, Dynamic, Hulu, Epic Universe, the Marvel rights to the theme parks, the Simpsons rights to the theme parks. There's a lot going on here. It's very, very fascinating. Comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. Also, make sure you subscribe to MickeyViews if you are not subscribed. He is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. He's doing a lot more than I was at his age. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he's doing a lot more than me currently. he's got all kinds of stuff going on. I'm like, wow, this kid, he's rocking it. Great stuff, guys. Seriously.
Absolutely great stuff. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.